Uh, Thank you, Catherine. I must also thank Arnab, my former colleague, for inviting me to join this dialogue. And I can also spot Mr. Praful Talera. It's after a long time we are meeting over a webinar like this, and it's wonderful to catch up with you. We have had some great, wonderful speakers that given us gone us in depth into it. Now, what I thought is, I'm sorry that I have to leave a little early because I have another meeting which I have to go at about 1800. So let me say that, let me first take you back a little back into a larger picture before we come back to what we are discussing. Now, one of the things is, as we turn this dawn of the century, we saw a lot of shifts in global politics. The most significant was the strategic focus of the entire world shifted from Atlantic Pacific to that of Pacific Indian Ocean. And slowly, with the growth of our Asian economies have started growing. So we wanted raw materials from not just the crude oil, but other raw materials from Africa and other nations coming to us. And the finished products from our countries going to Europe, Africa, and US, etc. So therefore, both the oceans actually got combined as a look, and strategy started calling it the Indo-Pacific construct, which is actually a strategic relationship between nations of the region have completely changed, enhanced focus, which I feel very happy as a mariner on the maritime domain. Now, if you just look at Indo-Pacific, just for some statistics, roughly about 60% of the world's GDP and 65% of the population is in this region, and 60% of the global trade flows through this area. And as one of the earlier speakers mentioned, the maritime zone and the coastal zone is so important. Nearly 2/3 of the world's population lives within 100 miles of the coastline. Now that's very important. All the major financial institutions, 75 to 80% of them are all located in and around a coastline. Now, when you look at it, it will be very evident that maritime security, which we discussed quite a bit now, has got a very predominant role. And as we came to the end of the 20th century, we also realized that the traditional naval confrontation that occurred between nations as on the high seas has virtually gone down. I would not say it does not exist, but it's gone down. Now it's become more challenges in the littoral or coastal region. And there are a lot of non-conventional maritime security challenges that have come up, which we also term as LIMO, or low intensity maritime operations. Now, this includes things like maritime terrorism, drugs and arms trafficking, piracy, human trafficking and smuggling, and what we all discussed, some area that you're going to illegal, unregulated, and unreported, or IUU fishing, which actually threatens the economy as well as the environment. Now, one of the other issues also has become the island territories, which we used to ignore earlier, have also become very susceptible, because especially if they are uninhabited or very low inhabitation, what happens is terrorist organizations or drug runners use it as a hideout. So therefore, that's become very crucial. Then today we also have a lot of merchantmen in dubious trade, which are under flags of convenience. So that has become another major threat. Another threat that is, if we're going to talk of technology, will be talked about, is cyber security. Virtually every section in our life, and even in the maritime industry, has become technology intensive, making them potential targets. So cyber security, therefore, emerging as a major challenge. And the UN Trade and Conference Transport, way back in 2017, said that new technologies, while they're transforming maritime transport industry, every section, port management, cargo handling, distribution, will all be affected. Now you can imagine, some years ago, you know that though it was an accident, in the Suez Canal, a ship got wrecked, and the entire traffic had to go around Africa and various things. Now imagine today somebody uses technology to ground a ship at the entrance to a major harbor or a major channel. We are all familiar with the Malacca channel that we have, or any of those areas. It can impact everybody, because the If there is no movement of cargo is restricted, even by a couple of days, it is millions of dollars of waste that is coming in. So therefore, another thing which again some of the speakers mentioned was that maritime security impacting is the rise of China and its assertive political and military behavior, not only in Western Pacific and South China Sea, which the Philippines and Indonesians are very familiar what they have. They draw their own artificial islands they try to create. And Taiwan is a very burning issue. While it still seems under, but it's a very, very simmering issue. We don't know when it'll happen. And China is also looking for bases like in the Indonesia, they have, Indian Ocean region. They have established a base in Djibouti, and they're looking for across Myanmar, Thailand, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, United Arab Emirates, Kenya, Seychelles, Tanzania, and now into Maldives. So therefore, while China has been claiming that it's only for peaceful development and looking after its own commercial interests, but as you have seen, when it suits them, they don't follow any international norms, and therefore this is another major security threat. So what we look at all this, this is where UDA has been playing. When we look at security issues, how do we achieve maritime security? Firstly, we should get aware of what are the threats that are developing, for which maritime domain awareness, while it's a new terminology, but even ancient countries have been using it, trying to monitor their area of interest. So basically, we need inputs from various agencies to correlate, analyze, and inputs to develop a tactical picture. Patrolling by ships, aircraft, unmanned vessels, space-based surveillance, and underwater-based sensors are all used for it. Now, one of the other things also more important, which I think none of the speakers mentioned, is humanitarian and disaster relief. Once we come to know that there is some threat developing, there's a problem, cyclone developing, you can actually evacuate people from that area. You can keep your ships ready to go and render assistance, to provide them food and assistance. I have had personal experience of, being on ships where we had to go and render assistance to people because of various these natural calamities. There were lack of food. There were places where we went after about, they were actually seeing even fresh water after 3 to 4 days. That's the kind of thing we had. And imagine where you have small children, etc., how much they lack all these institutions. So to safeguard, and of course, anti-submarine and underwater operations are also, we need monitoring system. It would be apparent that to safeguard maritime interest, nations would need to protect not only their littoral region, but also enhance completely around. Now, this is where what we have, somebody mentioned already, between friendly nations, we actually need to improve this awareness. We can cooperate with each other. And when we talk of MDA, today what's very much important is underwater domain awareness, which is focused on underwater sector. And Arnab mentioned quite a bit about it. Now, UDA is very vital to sea lanes of communications, because if there's submarines hiding and they put some inherent dangers there, which could threaten shipping, it's very important for us to know the submarines, mines, divers, and underwater unmanned vehicles that are also coming in. So it's not only a military one, but a scientific one to monitor the geophysical activities, which can provide vital clues and detect natural disasters and gather data on living and non-living resources. And it can also help us to safeguard degradation of ecosystems. So therefore, the maritime domain awareness, what we talked of, needs to be looked at in all directions. And it is something completely required all along. And which I mentioned, you need ships, etc., to do this. And we need collaboration between navies and coast guards, between ships of various nations, to understand each other's methodologies. And most maritime nations today are looking at bilateral, multilateral exercises. Indian Navy and the Coast Guard have been very active in this aspect. And one of the aspects we're working together in this region, which India took, was the setting up of the Information Fusion Center at Gurugram in 2018. We collaborate with countries of the region to enhance maritime domain awareness and share information. Now, today it has generated a lot of interest, and it has today got 24 international liaison officers from 20 countries. It has got established worldwide linkages with 133 partners from 57 countries, which includes navies, coast guards, maritime agencies, and influential shipping associations and companies, which enable exchange of maritime security information across the entire region. And another major initiative that India took, which is mentioned here by the last few speakers, the Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative, to manage, sustain, and secure maritime domain. This was put forward by India at the East Asia Summit at Bangkok in November 19. And it actually creating partnerships, which is already explained in the maritime domain. It's a non-treaty base, so you can come be partners. And the 7 pillars were already mentioned. So therefore, it is actually on maritime security, ecology, resources, capacity building, resource sharing, disaster resolution, science, technology, academic cooperation, trade connected maritime transport. So virtually every zone or every activity in the maritime field, we can cooperate. Now coming to India, Philippines, as already mentioned, it's almost 75 years. In 49, soon after our independence of both our countries in 46 and 47. And we have been, both have been very shared values, commonalities. We are a pluralistic society. Both of our countries believe in rule of the law. And when we launched the Look East policy, the partnership intensified with ASEAN in 92 and stronger relations with other regions of the world. And with the Act East policy came in 2014, we have further diversified relationship with Philippines in the political, security, trade, and industry. And with the current developments that are happening, the areas which some of my previous speakers already mentioned, which is very valid, a very broad canvas: security, defense, trade, finance, tourism, health, and more importantly, people-to-people relations and culture. Now, our bilateral levels, when I say it's not just at the high level, but telephonic conversations, virtual meetings can continue. Some of this continued even during the COVID-19 time. And seminars such as one we are having today is another area where we can enhance our bilateral relations. Now, the mainstay of bilateral defense cooperation continues to remain on capacity building, training exchanges, and signing in January 22 of the contract. Everybody mentioned the BrahMos missile. Then you have a 5-member delegation of the Philippine Coast Guard, which visited India in August 23. A MOU for enhanced maritime cooperation was signed. And we also had a bilateral meeting with the Philippine Coast Guard and the Indian Coast Guard. A lot of standard operating procedure and white shipping information was signed between the Philippine Coast Guard and the Indian Navy. And there are also track 2 dialogues. And so all this is something which is happening. So India and Philippines are very lot of shared maritime concerns, particularly as I mentioned about China's aggressive policies. And as one of the speakers earlier mentioned, the Philippine President, Ferdinand Marcos Jr. and India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi have been a very lot of cooperation on broadening the institutionalizing between countries and emerging bilateral defense partnership. We also want to look at things happening. For us, the focus Indian Ocean region and the South China Sea. More coordination will be required. The Indian Navy and Coast Guard ships regularly visit Philippines and have a lot of conversations, including the ships just go around for turnaround. It develops a linkage between the two maritime forces. So the current geopolitical transformation and growing attention to the Asia-Pacific region has in a way ensured that 21st century, there are very few areas of greater strategic importance than maritime domain. And more importantly, the Indo-Pacific. And India and Philippines are strategically located. While India's location is evident, we also need to remember that Southeast Asia is commonly recognized as the center of Indo-Pacific. If you look at the map, it will be very apparent. The vision of an area of peace, security, stability, and prosperity for all nations to work together and global good is gaining support. While we need to interact at higher political official levels, exercises between maritime forces of nations at regular intervals, and close cooperation between strategic think tanks. That is where I think MRC has taken the initiative, and it's an area, and like we discussed, underwater domain awareness, very, very important. Both our nations, fishing is a very major activity. In fact, it was to prevent the illegal shipping that the Indian Coast Guard itself got formed in 1977. And there were fishermen from all the countries coming and taking. Today, now again, my being from Kerala, which is a coastal state and where fishing has been very important. We have had some, a lot of our people writing about it. People used to be, by singing songs in Malayalam, they used to be taught what is important fisheries. And they all went, you used to tell them that there are certain times when you don't go out to sea. Today, scientifically, we analyze and say that, yes, that is where you want the larvae to come up. And you don't go during certain periods. And when they get the first instinct, all these people, and those days all, boat, by rowing boats or sailboats, there were no power boats, etc. So they were restricted in their area and they used to go and get it. And today, let me tell you a very interesting thing which I came across actually at Seawell as one of the ships. We talk of technology, how smartly the fishermen use it. When the mobile phones came into being and the range got extended to about 25 nautical miles from our coastline into the sea. We saw some fishermen, we knew they were from which area they were. I said, why are you going to that other area? I hope you're not lost your way because your home is there. He said, no, sir. We are monitored and we get better price for fish today in so-and-so area. So we are going to go and land our catch in that area rather than going to our own place. Now, that's the kind of technology, even this happened, I'm talking of almost about 20 years ago when the mobiles had just come in. So therefore, the fishermen are very sharp. You may think them to be, not high-grade technology, etc. But naturally, they use a lot of these, intuitive information. So I think by think tanks like this that Arnab and all are doing, and collaboration between our countries, this is something we can utilize for both our countries. And again, I'm shifting from fish and coast to, again, though a coastal state. Many years ago, we had the Amul milk set up in India by a visionary called Korean. What he did was people they didn't know how to use it. So if you could sell your milk, most of it is getting wasted. So he brought in technology, cooperated, how they can bring together, how we can convert it into milk powder and long-term products, etc. Now, similar thing, we are catching on in the fishing industry also. But that is something we can develop further by cooperation between both the nations. So let me sum up by saying that in the 21st century, there are very few areas of strategic importance than maritime domain. Oceans have been thoroughfares of global prosperity and security of nations. Now, historically, between India and Philippines, we have had very close cooperation from ages. Our traders have been going across to these areas many, many years ago, well before we discovered this. So it is something that we can, and maritime domain awareness is something that can help us to effective understanding of the maritime domain, security, safety, economy, and even environment. And understanding of it will also give us timely responses. And underwater domain awareness is a very, very crucial element. And I must personally congratulate my former colleague Arnab for taking the initiative, setting up of this. We have had quite a few conversations in India, but I think this is something now he has brought forth the importance of this to the community as large. So partnership between like-minded nations give us the best options, and strategic locations of India and Philippines certainly call for enhancing cooperation between both our nations. Apart from mutual concern, we can also strengthen security and stability in the environment across the entire region, bringing in economic growth and prosperity. The importance of maritime issues slowly emerging in the policies of little countries, and as a blue economy, I think we're going to have a talk about it a little later, is also being recognized as an important dimension in future. And IPOI, as 2-3 other speakers have mentioned, is a major initiative. And together, I think we can cooperate and do both for not only our nations, but the entire community. And seminars such as this one would certainly give us a lot of innovative ideas. I stop here. Thank you, Arnab, and wishing the project all success.